Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You're welcome. My name is Adobe Onyejim. I'm the Director of Partnerships here at the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, and I'm very delighted to welcome you all to this Construction and Real Estate Summit theme, The Future of Real Estate, Floating Cities, Skyscrapers, and Tech-Driven Living. I'm very excited to see our President and Chairman of Council, Mr. Riatele FFPA, and our Council and Exco members, our distinguished guest speakers, Mrs. Udo Ukonjo, CEO and Vice Chair of Fine and Country West Africa, and Mr. Hakeem Ogunoron, Managing Director and CEO of Eximia Realty, the moderator, Mr. Odunaya Ojo, MD CEO of UPDC, our panelists, Akin Opatola, President of FIABCI Nigeria, and Nicole Bershan, Chief Sales Officer at Construct Technology Limited, and all of our beautiful esteemed guests. Please rise as we observe the Nigerian and British national anthems.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians old and proud to serve our sovereign motherland. Our flag shall be a symbol that truth and justice reign. It leads all back to honor, and its beacons must be to hand to our children a banner which shall stay. O God of all creation, grant this our holy rest. Help us to build our nation where no man is oppressed. And so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed.
Thank you. We may have our seats. Before we begin, please allow me to state some housekeeping guidelines. For our physical attendees, questions will be answered during the Q&A session. Please raise your hands and a microphone will be brought to you. For those joining us through virtually, if this volume is too low, kindly check the volume on your gadget. For questions, comments, and discussions, please use the chat icon. Thank you for listening. Please join me as we welcome our President and Chairman of Council, Mr. Ray Ateli, to give us his welcome address.
Thank you. A beautiful Friday morning to all of us here present. Usually when you have events like this on Friday, this is the kind of outcome because a lot of people are already in the weekend mode. And so with time, the room will fill up a bit, I believe. But what we have today is a summit. And by its nature, a summit is serious business. And we have brought very experienced professionals to come and address the item that we have for discussion today. And hopefully, we will go home with a lot. And those who are joining us virtually, I know that you will have one or two takeaways from today. The future of real estate, floating cities, skyscrapers, and tech-driven living. Are we ready for this? Hopefully, we'll hear from our distinguished speakers. The real estate construction industries are at a turning point as we navigate a rapidly evolving world defined by urbanization, climate adaptation, and technological breakthroughs. The future will determine how we live, work, and thrive tomorrow. From the ambitious rise of vertical megacities to the innovative concept of floating urban centers designed to combat rising sea levels, the real estate landscape is transforming at an unprecedented pace. This summit is not just a gathering, it is an opportunity for all stakeholders across the construction, real estate, and urban planning to rethink traditional development models and embrace the possibilities of tech-driven, sustainable living. Nigeria, as Africa's largest economy, holds immense potential to lead the way in shaping this future. However, to harness this potential, we must address key challenges, including infrastructural deficits, sustainability issues or concerns, and the adoption of cutting-edge technologies. The time is now to reimagine how we build, innovate, and create spaces that serve both present and future generations. Today, we are privileged to have some of the brightest minds and change makers in the real estate and construction space. Our guest speakers include Udo Kunjo, CEO and Vice Chair of Fine and Country West Africa, whose trailblazing leadership and insights into luxury real estate and sustainable urban growth will undoubtedly set the tone for today's discussions. We also have our own Hakeem Oguniran, Managing Director and CEO of Eximia Realty, whose deep expertise in real estate development and strategic urban planning will offer us some invaluable perspectives as we navigate this future. We have our esteemed panelists, including Mr. Akin Okpatola, the President of FIAPC Nigeria, and Nicole Becken, Chief Sales Officer at Construct Technology Limited, who bring global experience and forward-thinking ideas to this occasion. Our moderator is Odwayo Uju, MD of UPDC, who will skillfully guide us through today's conversations. Let me also acknowledge and appreciate efforts of the Construction and Real Estate Committee that put this together, and our sponsors, whose unwavering commitment to advancing innovation and excellence in real estate has kept this summit going over the years. As we dive deep into today's session, let us challenge ourselves to think beyond convention. How can we harness technology, affordable technology, that is, to create smart, self-sustaining buildings? How do we develop vertical and floating cities that optimize space and adapt to environmental realities? And most importantly, how do we ensure that the future of real estate is not just innovative, but also equitable and sustainable for all? The answers lie in collaboration, creativity, and bold leadership. At the end of the summit today, I do hope that we will leave not just inspired, but also better equipped to take actionable steps that will shape the future of real estate in Nigeria. Together, let us build the future that we envision, a future where cities are smarter, skylines bolder, and communities empowered technologically. What we need in the country at the moment, we already know. If you look at the South African environment, you see that, yes, the real estate sector there, more or less, is highly developed. But there is something that ignites that development, and that is affordability. In this country, a lot of times, properties are developed, off-takers are not there, and the properties are in the market for a long time, and it makes throws spanners in the works of the developers a lot of times. Not that we don't need this. We were told that we have about 28 million units housing deficit in Nigeria. So if we have that volume of deficit, it means that all the properties around us should be fully occupied. But sometimes they are developed, and the people who need to have them don't have the means to have them. And so it's a conundrum of sorts. What do we do? And then we've talked about affordable housing a few times. What is affordable? If the inputs have fixed rates and you have to put them together to build a house, at the end of the day, it's the inputs that will determine where your price is going to be. So it's not a social scheme. It's commercial, it's business. And so when you're done developing and the figures are out, that's where it has to be. No strings attached and no sentiments equally. And so please help us today at this summit. Let's see how we can, not so much interested in the floating cities, but how do we ensure that we can envision a future where the average Nigerian who is gainfully employed can afford to buy property over time. And, of course, spread payment and the banking sector is also there to provide the funding so that we can have a lot of house owners instead of renters, as is the case is right now. Even the renters are struggling. It's a situation that we need to, address. But having said all this, we leave it to the experts. So when they take the floor, they are going to address all this, and I'm eager to hear what advice they have for us. Please enjoy your morning. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we're going to be having our first keynote presentation from Mrs. Udo Ukonjo. Mrs. Udo Okonjo is a global business leader, multi-award-winning real estate entrepreneur, and international lawyer. She's currently the Chief Executive Officer and Vice Chairman of Fine and Country West Africa. She's a seasoned legal practitioner who was admitted to the Nigerian Bar Association and New York Bar in 1991 and 1994. She's passionate about leadership development, real estate, and entrepreneurship as a means of wealth creation and nation building. And in her second half, Ms. Udo Okonjo is motivated by helping high-impact leaders expand their zone of possibilities and maximize leadership. She's also the founder of Africa's premier female leadership academy, iWow Leadership Academy, and the social impact platform Inspired Women of Worth, founded in October 2010 in Johannesburg, South Africa, to elevate, empower, and connect women who together have become a positive global force and collectively do a world of good in various areas of impact. Please join me as we welcome Mrs. Udo Okonjo to give her keynote presentation. Thank you so much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, distinguished speakers. It's a pleasure to be here. It was interesting to hear the president say we're not here necessarily talk about floating cities, and I could see everyone chuckling. I could just imagine the picture in people's heads thinking about, how we float through our streets in Lagos and in other parts of Nigeria. And, is that what we're referring to as floating cities, or is there more? I say that, but I truly believe in the power of ideas. Many years ago, I was at the Oxford Real Estate program at the Oxford University in the UK, and the summit that we had, the theme was, where do skyscrapers come from? And I came back to Nigeria and I wrote about it. And I wrote about it because I was very fascinated by the topic, but also because the United Arab Emirates, as a country, I'd 20 years ago seen its emergence. I remember the time they announced that they were going to have the train. And now, just a few weeks ago, I was there and just tracking back to the last 20 years to how far that city has come. And so when I think about the conversation, where do skyscrapers come from? Where do floating cities come from? Where does tech living start from? And, the simple answer for me, ladies and gentlemen, this morning, and that's really where I'd like to anchor and start from, is that it starts with ideas. And ideas is what leadership is about. It is leaders who conceptualize new cities. It is leaders who created Nigerian cities. It is leaders who created South African cities and affordable housing, including the luxury ones. Every building we see, every piece of real estate is answering to an idea that somebody had. And so it's the quality of ideas that frames real estate. And ideas is what defines leadership. So I want to start by asking another question. If every single one of us here could build a city from the scratch, what legacy would that city have? What legacy would it carry? Just imagine with me for a second that you had an opportunity to recreate Lagos. What would you visualize? If you have an opportunity to recreate Makoko, which is our version of a floating city, what could you create? If you had to recreate Enugu or Benin or Kano, where I grew up, what would you create? So at the end of the day, I truly believe, so I want to first start by saying thank you and well done to the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, the Real Estate and Construction Committee, for coming up with such a forward-looking topic. Because sometimes in the midst of the difficult challenges that we face as a country and even globally, there's a sense in which we want to focus on just today. But leadership is not about just today. Leadership is about designing the future and creating that which looks impossible. It is why you have floating cities in places like, you could say, Venice in the Netherlands, in the Maldives, and more recently, the boldest official floating city that is backed by the United Nations in, I believe it's called Busan in South Korea. I'm not an expert on floating cities, but I'm fascinated by the idea of leadership. And that's what has shaped everything that we do at Fine and Country. 17 years ago, I stood at the edge of a dusty plot with a real estate developer and asked a simple question. This project was somewhere between Victoria Island and Oniru. I asked him, I said, why are you building this residential development here and in this way? He looked at me and smiled, and he said, Madam, I'm just trying to maximize profit. We can relate to that, can't we? So I asked, don't you care about what this place will look like in 50 years? How people will live here? Or how they will speak about the person who created this development? He laughed. And his answer to me was, you are speaking English. Can anyone relate to that? That moment stayed with me. Because in one exchange, I saw the tension we face in African real estate, not just Nigeria. The pull between profit now and posterity later. And yet, these countries that we all go to, these countries, some of them are designing the future. That's how come we have real skyscrapers that are trying to outdo each other. From Dubai to New York to Shanghai to London and all over the world. I'll tell you another story. Many years ago, we were working with one of our clients in Victoria Island, and they were building a building. They said, we're going to build, a tower. And they called it, I'm not going to mention the name, something Heights. And that building was all of 15-story buildings, 15 stories, the building that was called Heights. Now, when you go to a place like Dubai, a 15-story building, a 20-story building is considered mid-rise, low to mid-rise, even though formally there are definitions for those. But I say that to say that we're not looking to import everything hook, line, and sinker, but it's really about the ideas. It's about the boldness of the ideas. What are we looking to design and build? Are we just looking at real estate, or do we see an opportunity to shape society? I got into real estate not just to sell and advise on luxury homes and developments or to secure mandates. I came to shift the thinking around what we build, how we live, and the impact that we leave behind. I came to challenge how we lead, to move us from a transactional mindset to transformational leadership. Because real estate is not really just about buildings. It's about bold decisions that shape how people live, work, and thrive for generations to come. This mindset has shaped everything that we do at Fine and Country, from advising corporate clients, financial institutions, to guiding private developers and owner-occupiers across Lagos, Abuja, Ghana, and the Gambia, and in between. We're not just obsessed with the buildings. We're obsessed with how they shape skylines, shift cities, and support the people who inhabit them. And I believe that there are lots of real estate stakeholders who have the same mindset. Otherwise, we will not be having the conversation we're having today. That's why today's conversation about floating cities, skyscrapers, and tech-driven living is not just about trends. It is about leadership. It's about having the courage to ask bigger questions and to build with legacy in mind. I was walking into this building. I'm here to challenge, so please permit me. And I walk up to the front and I say, is there a lift? And the ladies at the front, giggled. Like, no, there's a staircase. I said, yes, I know there's a staircase, but is there a lift? And they said, no, there's no lift. I said, what if I was handicapped? It's a simple idea, but it's the sort of conversation that as a community in the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, the real estate and construction division or group, we ought to be having. we have to demonstrate leadership. It's a tough call out, but it's an important call out. Because it's the little things that become big things. And so I bring that challenge as I say, the world is shifting, but are we leading or are we lagging? The world is not waiting. Cities are evolving and fast too. Buildings now generate their own power. Smart homes adjust to human emotion. You walk in, if they know you're happy, if the house knows you're happy, it knows what to do. We've heard of digital twins simulating cities before a single brick is laid. Floating cities are not science fiction. They are prototyped in Asia and Western Europe right now. Last year, I was privileged to be in the Maldives. Before I went, I didn't realize that Maldives was really in the middle of nowhere. When somebody reached out and then they did a pinpoint and map and showed me where I was horrified. We're literally in the middle of the Indian Ocean, surrounded by water for miles. Buildings on water. It's not a science fiction, and that's only the baseline. See what they're doing in South Korea. And while the world builds forward, we must ask, are we going to lead the change or are we going to watch from the sidelines? The market is no longer asking, what can I buy? People are asking, what does this space make possible for me? If you build an office today, don't just think that people are coming to work. People are now working from home on a few days. So when they come in, can we start to think about our offices in a different way, bringing in elements of home, as some companies, the Googles of this world and various forward-thinking companies are doing. And so the designers of this building, the architects, the builders should ask bolder questions. And our buildings should take the shape of how people now live, play, and work. I believe that we have an opportunity. And here's what excites me. Africa doesn't need to play catch-up. Africa can leap ahead. We are the youngest continent. Our cities are growing faster than any other region. The demand is here. The opportunity is now. Whether you're talking about Eco-Atlantic's bold land reclamation, I do have actually a presentation. You can actually have if it's, because it just helps people with the visuals. Whether you're talking about Eco-Atlantic's bold reclamation, or you're talking about Kigali's innovation city, or Rendezvous's planned urban habitats all over the continent, the ambition is real. We see it all over the place. Or is it Orange Island? But ambition is not enough. And we have some great results already, doing great work. And we must applaud them. But we must ask, are we building for today or for the next 100 years? Are we designing structures or are we shaping societies? As far as I'm concerned, floating cities is actually a signal, not a solution. Let's take a look at this. It may seem distant, but it's happening already, floating cities. In South Korea, the UN-backed Oceanics Busan is under construction. It's a city that's designed to float, powered by renewable energy, built to rise with sea levels. In the Netherlands, homes float on canals, rising and falling with the tides. But closer to home, in Lagos, we have a floating community, Makoko. Makoko is not just a floating city by design. It's a community built on stilts above water. Not because of climate innovation, but out of necessity, out of exclusion, out of a lack of planning. It floats not for the future, but for survival. But what if we were to flip that? What if we reimagine Makoko not as a symbol of urban neglect, but as a blueprint of Afro-urban innovation? What if we moved from floating communities of desperation to cities of design and dignity? Let me clarify a confusion, because I reached out to my brother, Hakim Oguniro, in preparation for this, to say to him, floating cities, you know? But I liked the idea of going to do the research, actually. Because my first reaction was, we're far from that. But actually, when I put on the leadership hat, which is the hat I'm asking all of us to put on, because listen, the challenge and the struggle is real in Africa and in our country. But as real estate leaders, it is our responsibility to go beyond today to design tomorrow. So let me just clarify my initial confusion between reclaimed versus floating cities. Because maybe some people may think, oh, Eko Atlantic, is it a floating city? Is Orange Island a floating city? All the reclaimed. There's a difference between reclaimed land and floating cities. Eko Atlantic is a reclaimed land built by extending land into the sea. So when you say in real estate, they're not making any more land, not really true. In Nigeria, we're creating new land by actually reclaiming, and you can do that. But the principle is still valid, that land is scarce. The Palm Jumeirah in Dubai, beautiful, bold, but fixed. Floating cities, on the other hand, they are modular, water-based platforms, adaptable, climate resilient, and built to respond to the tide. So it's really about ambition and adaptability. But here's the real reason why the whole idea of skyscrapers, floating cities, and tech-driven living, why it matters. Specifically, let me take a look at the idea that we're not here to copy foreign cities and what they're doing. We just want to extract principles from these ideas, these bold, forward-looking ideas, and say, how can we break them down into our own environment? For example, on the issue of floating city, if we look at the Nigerian reality, if you look at places that are flood-prone, resilience to flooding is one of the ways that we can think of the idea of how do we begin to think. If you think about Bayelsa, you think about Lagos, these are areas. Can we think about our projects in ways that actually enhance the environment and that future-proofs those communities or developments that we're building? Second way we have to look at it is that when you think about the idea that we're discussing today about really the future, we don't have enough land for the population that we have. So we have to start thinking about compact vertical density. There's urban pressure in Lagos and Abuja. We're seeing now mixed use vertical communities. But as we think about those vertical communities where we're talking about tall buildings with multiple users, whereas people were in the past used to just having their land, having their space, and being their own, essentially landlords and making all the decisions. Now you're going to live in communities and be tied in to the rules of that community. You have to pay for service charge. The number of hours of power they want to give you, you have to be bound by it. So now we have to go beyond just building to actually reshaping the mindset of the users of these communities, these tall buildings, and these big communities that we're building. What about smart infrastructure? There's a rise in prop tech. The other day, one of our team members was with some young developers, leaders in the prop tech space, doing incredible things. There's a smart metering, solar automation. There's so much that can be done. When we think about floating cities, we also have to remember that it means that there's a public-private collaboration happening. So these are some of the ideas I want us to pull out of this idea of this topic that we're looking at. So we may not be yet ready to build floating cities, but the idea is to challenge us that when we think about skyscrapers, when we think about floating cities, when we think about tech-driven living, which aspects of these can we bring in today into our real estate, into our development, into our investments, and which of these ideas can we adapt to our local problems? Sustainability by design, this is so critical because there's so much impact funds chasing after ESG compliant real estate projects. This is something that we cannot do without. So we may not be building floating cities, or we may not have 100-story buildings yet, but can we adopt the thinking behind them? We must lead from fear, but not from fear, but with foresight. The real gap is not just tech, it is leadership. And honestly, tech can be outsourced, tech can be learned, but vision, that comes from you. It comes from all of us. So many leaders still operate from scarcity, survival, and short-term thinking, but we have to be legacy-driven leaders. I truly believe that the future will not be shaped by who builds the most. It will be shaped by who builds with meaning. So, closing, I really wanted to challenge us as professionals, as industry experts, as stakeholders. Every plot of land is a blank page. Every building we raise tells a story. The question is, what story are we telling? Is it one of temporary trends or timeless transformation? If you could build a city from scratch, what legacy would it carry? Let us not just be deal makers, let's be destiny architects. Let's build, lead boldly, build wisely, and design cities not just for living, but for legacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma, for that very insightful session. Next up, please, can we have the lead sponsors video advert from Nigerian-British Refinance Company Limited?
Ever wondered about NMRC and how refinancing works? At the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, NMRC, we understand that every family has a dream to live in their own home. We also recognize that this aspiration can be costly, particularly for those that work and live in Nigeria's city centers and suburbs. A reliable and convenient option when buying a home is to get housing loans from banks. Before the emergence of NMRC, most banks depended on their short-term deposits for their mortgage lending activities. Due to the short-term nature of these loans, the monthly payments were high, with short average tenors of 5 years for mortgage loans. The NMRC was established to rectify this situation by providing long-term loans and supporting the liquidity of mortgage lenders in Nigeria through mortgage refinance. And this is how it works. Let's say you are ready to buy a home and you apply to a mortgage lending bank for a loan. If you meet the loan requirements, the bank will approve your mortgage loan application. Once you buy a home, the mortgage bank can either hold the loan on its books till you're done paying back, or the bank can sell it in the secondary mortgage market. This is where NMRC comes in. NMRC purchases loans that mortgage lending banks create after a performance period that evaluates the applicant's loan repayment patterns for risk and suitability. NMRC issues securities that are backed by these mortgages and sells the same to capital market investors. By doing this, NMRC ensures mortgage lenders have access to more funds, create new mortgages, and increase lending to new borrowers. NMRC keeps long-term funding flowing and available by linking the housing market to the capital market. Through mortgage refinance, NMRC gives mortgage applicants access to longer tenured loans, and this helps to make home ownership more affordable for the average household. So, explore the option to refinance your mortgage today.
Thank you, media team. Next up, we're going to be having a second keynote presentation from Mr. Hakeem Oguniran, the Managing Director, CEO, Eximia Realty Co. Limited. He is also the non-executive chairman of the Board of Directors of Lagos Building Investment Co. PLC and non-executive director, Rail UK, and few other companies. He's a frequent speaker, a member of the National Association of Real Estate Investment Trust, the worldwide representative for REITs and listed real estate companies, and a former Fulbright visiting scholar at the Yale Law School, USA, where he has attended several management training programs, including the Unilever International Management Seminar. Please join us as we welcome Mr. Hakeem Oguniran.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd like to welcome you once again on behalf of NBCC, the Construction and Real Estate Committee. I think Udo has laid a very firm foundation. I think I'm just going to add a few footnotes here and there just to connect the dots. I don't know whether you have my presentation already. So I've titled my presentation, The Future of Real Estate, Trends, Drivers, and Opportunity Footprints. So basically, I want to try and just achieve 3 or 4 things. Number one is to look at the future of real estate from the angle of the factors which are forcing change today. What are those factors driving change today? If we're able to understand those factors, then we can begin to recreate everything that we do in order to prepare ourselves for the obvious transformation that is bound to happen. Now, I also like to look at real estate, the future of real estate from the angle of the size, the value, because it's also important for us to begin to think of how and where we want to position ourselves. You know, one of the things that we try to do at NBCC when we have this event is to tell people where to pitch their tent. So I'll be looking at what I call the opportunity footprints, both in terms of sectors and in terms of geographies. I will try to do some deep dive into the Nigerian real estate market. I always like to look at the trends, category analysis, and the future drivers. You know, but there's something I started doing from last year. I had to keynote a conference in Kigali last year. And in looking at the future of real estate in Africa, with reference to Nigeria, I had to look deeply into what I call the development trends. Because if you're looking at the future of real estate in any economy, all you need to do is to look at the real estate ecosystem and see what is happening. If you look at that ecosystem in that country, then you can gauge the level of confidence, the investors' appetite or apathy, as the case may be, and that helps you to peep into the future, and then you can know what you're going to, where you're going to be pitching your tent. And finally, which I like to also do is, I call it pitching your tent. What are the opportunity footprints? You know, in this country, we are always guilty of herd mentality. My people say we sleep and we put our heads in the same place. But the reality of the matter is that this market has shifted, you know, and with the shift in the market, with the shift in the economy, it also means that as a sector, we have to begin to speak to those shifts or be ahead of those shifts. So, for example, 2 trends that I always like to talk about now is that now, we've noticed now that from October to December, we have a lot of reverse medical tourism in Nigeria. So people come for reverse medical tourism from Canada, from the US, from the UK, because the waiting period in those countries for ophthalmologists, for dentistry, is now way too long. So they come back home. So, but they're only staying for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and they do require real estate facilities. The other trend which I'm also going to speak to is that also for some reason, most of us, we have shipped our children abroad. You know, so our children are all over the world, in Canada, in the UK, in the US, and the truth of the matter is that many of those children are not going to come back this way. You know, so I think that in the next 7-10 years, the demand for care homes, you know, anytime I speak about it, people begin to look, but that's just the reality, because I'm very, very definite that in 7 to 10 years, the demand for care home is going to rise astronomically in this country, because people can't just manage all the big houses that they have built. Can you please show my presentation now, please? So I begin with my open thoughts, and I'll be glad if you can show this. You know, I belong to a very close network on LinkedIn, and we're always talking about the future of real estate. So early this year, we're talking about the future of real estate vis-a-vis other asset classes. And there's somebody, one of the global speakers, you know, and I have a quote from him. And this is really where I'm going to anchor a lot of what I will be discussing about the future of real estate. Look at what Geoff Weaver said. He said, "Forget the hype around stocks and crypto. Real estate is the undisputed king of asset classes. In 2025, it is estimated to be worth a staggering $450 trillion, according to JP Morgan. dwarfing the combined value of stocks and bonds. The future of real estate isn't being written in dusty old books. It is being coded in the language of Web3, blockchain, and AI. Those who master this code will inherit the earth. Own the future, own real estate. Now, as a player in this segment, there are two or three things I always like to say when we speak about the future of real estate. The first thing is that everything happens on land. Everything happens on land. So we build houses on land, we build factories on land, we build hotels on land, everything happens on land. At least until the day when Elon Musk decides to move some of us to Mercury or Mars, everything will continue to happen on land. Now, the implication of that, I always tell the ICT people that when we speak of ICT, when we speak of cloud computing, they speak of cloud computing. The reality of the matter is that what they call the cloud lives on the ground inside data centers. That is real estate. So even the foundation for cloud computing, for cloud computing is real estate. So today you can do anything you like in the metaverse. I hear somebody is building a church in the metaverse in Lagos now. So you can go to your church in the metaverse, you can go to meetings in the metaverse, you can do anything in the metaverse. In the evening, you will still return to a physical house to sleep. That still underscores the significance, of real estate. So when you look at it from that perspective, you begin to understand when people say that this asset class has an overreaching and overbearing effect. You begin to understand exactly what they mean. Today, in 2021, McKinsey came out with a report that real estate is the biggest asset. If you can just show my presentation, people can see it. Because according to McKinsey, and that's been confirmed by everybody thereafter, Harvard Business School, Saville's, So today, in terms of value, real estate is between 60 to 65% of global store of wealth. Stock is about 15%. Bonds is about 10 to 15%. Commodities is about 30 to 5%. Currencies is about 1 to 2%. And alternative investment is about 15 to 20%. Now, people have asked me, people always ask, what about cryptos? But the reality of the matter, today, the total value of cryptos, is still less than 5 trillion. Whereas real estate is tending towards 397 trillion US dollars. So I have a slide, which shows the allocation of assets globally. And I'm saying this to underscore the significance of this very critical asset class and how we should begin to understand how we need to position this asset class for the future, how we need to be bold in our thinking, how we need to be bold, how we need to be a lot more visionary about what we do. Like Udo said, it's not just about building, it's about recreating the future through the vehicles, that we put together in this respect. Then I look at what are the factors forcing change in real estate. Number one, of course, is urbanization, which the president spoke to so eloquently, and even Udo also spoke to. It is estimated that daily 200,000 people come into the cities. In Nigeria, the estimate is that by 2050, 70% of our people will live in the cities. And that puts a lot of pressure on the cities. That's what leads to the informal communities. So people just come from anywhere. They land in Lagos, nowhere to go. They stay under the bridge. They become like 10 or 20. It leads to slums and all that stuff. But the critical point is that as urbanization continues to grow, it puts pressure on real estate. We're living with new realities post-COVID, new ways of working, new ways of living. The demands and the preferences of a lot of the people. I play in the mid-segment market. When I started my business, I decided to play in the segment that deals with starter homes, young families, and so on and so forth. A lot of the things that we we used to pay undue attention to, they don't matter to that category of people. And I'll give you a typical example. One of the critical issues around, I'm a developer, one of the critical issues around the size of what we build. So we did our research, and we found that in that category, a lot of the people, they're not interested in the mansions. And at any rate, like 8 years ago, PwC already told us that the era of Mark mansions is gone, But these people, they want to live in. So I always describe them that they want to go to Quilocks. I know people don't know what Quilocks is. They want to go to Quilocks, close by 3 a.m. and get to their houses within 15 minutes. Now, in that radius, they're not looking for a mansion. They're just looking for a space, good location, good facilities, internet. I've discovered that for that generation, Wi-Fi is more important than water. So when water goes, the kind of reaction you get is not as violent as when the internet is not working in the estate. Wi-Fi is more important than water, and things like that. These are some of the conversations that, I've had to have with people in that category, But they are ready to trade size for proximity. That's the overriding consideration. And that's what we've seen in some of the developments that we have done. So new realities, e-commerce is becoming the standard. And when you have the upsurge of e-commerce, it drives the future of real estate because it simply means that, people always stress that e-commerce doesn't deliver goods. E-commerce only enables transactions. E-commerce enables transactions. So when you have upsurge of e-commerce, you need a very strong supply chain architecture to drive the delivery to the various homes. And what comes with the architecture is real estate. So there are other critical issues, new actors, new competing asset classes. The reality of the matter is that for those of us in this industry, we must know that we are competing with asset classes that are more liquid, nimbler, easily scalable, unlike real estate going into the future. Technological innovation, which Udo has already spoken about, sustainability, rapid shift in customer values and needs, and so on and so forth. I think you are going ahead. You need to come back a bit. Okay, so I have the framework, and I'm just going to leave this. I have framework for the future of real estate, which the World Economic Forum has put together. I have it in the slide. So let's just stay on this slide. The reason why I'm showing this slide is for us to understand. I want us to try to begin to imagine the future of real estate in Africa and in Nigeria. So if you look at this slide, it's telling us that in terms of the share of global population, Africa shares about 16-18%. That's Africa in purple. But in terms of the share of global real estate, that's it in purple, we share less than 1 or 2%. What does that tell you for the future of real estate in Africa? It tells you that the opportunities are simply almost immeasurable, because it means that the people are grossly underserved by virtue of the level of real estate development that they have. So I followed that with some key statistics on potentials of real estate in Africa. The estimated market size is at 2025. Can you just move to the next slide? Next slide. The African real estate market is described as vibrant and booming. What are the drivers? Rising affluence, enhanced urban living, and so on and so forth. And I'm just going to skip that. The potential is buoyed by huge deficits. We're told that deficit in Africa is about 50 million units. And of course, Nigeria takes about 40% of that. So recently, go forward. So recently, Olubunmi Adesina was speaking about the opportunity in just the residential segment by 2050. And it says in that segment alone, the potential is close to 1.4 trillion US dollars. Okay, so let me quickly now, you can go to the next slide. So I want to quickly look at the Nigerian market, look at the drivers, the trends, and the development trends, as I mentioned earlier. Nigerian market estimated size as at this year is 2.6 trillion US dollars. Residential always takes over 80-90%. Population, we know, depending on who is counting, they say we're between 180 and 250 million. Urbanization, I already mentioned, as at now is 55%. By 2050, it's going to 70%. And housing deficits, about 20 million units. I don't know whether we've seen that real estate has now overtaken oil and gas. So we are now number 3 as contributor to GDP. So after agriculture and trade is now real estate. And that to me is very significant because it underscores the position of real estate in the economy and how governments begin to look at us much more differently. I have this snapshot of real estate sector, courtesy Dr. Adedipe. I will leave that. There are 2 slides I've been trying to build to show, to underscore the argument around deficit. So if you show the next slide, there's always an argument. Some people say, there's no deficit in Nigeria, that there are empty houses, But my simple test is a developer builds 20 houses in Lagos. He is able to collect money from 200 people, 250 people, It shows that there's acute shortage, And from my experience, we are just onboarding tenants into a new development that we just finished not too far from here. Just 12 apartments, and we've pre-qualified over 100 people who are interested, So that shows the level of demand and supply in the market. Okay, let me now quickly move to trends. Can go forward now. Trends and category analysis. I always like to do this, look at the categories. Next slide, please. The residential segment. We know the home ownership rate is about 25% in Nigeria. So that tells you the mass of opportunity in that market. We have a very young population. We're told that between 16 to 27 the people aged between 16 to 27 are about 75 million. That is a huge market. There's upsurge in diaspora investment for obvious reasons. Naira is very weak now. So there are hugely tremendous opportunities in most sub-segments. Luxury is a unique category. Those who play in this category, they understand that the market segments are still largely favorable. The reason is simple. Those who buy in that category, they don't need financing support. They're either buying their second or third homes, or either for their children or for their wives, or side chicks, as the case may be. So they have the money. Oh, but that's true. So they have the money and the content. I was speaking to the CEO of El Alan the other. Sometimes we had a program like this. I was just trying to understand that segment. Reality of the segment is very, very strong. I wish I could play in the segment like Udo, but I play in another segment. The classic segment is tough because this is like the red ocean of the real estate industry. Everybody is playing here. So to survive here, you need very strong value proposition, flexible payment plan, delivery reliability, and so on and so forth. Comfort homes, demand here is exceptionally strong for first-time home buyers, young families, and empty nesters. There's a huge market for empty nesters now. So you have husband and wife, they've built a 10-bedroom house in VI, all the children are all over the world. The house is too big for them to maintain. They are looking for a 2-3-bedroom apartment. I've seen that. And so it's a huge market for that. I've spoken about trading size for proximity. But in that category, the young people in that category, they are very aspirational in what they want. They do co-living, financing assistance, and so on and so forth. Affordable and social housing, there's a whole lot going on, but it's not really within my scope today. Office outlook is not very favorable because of oversupply, even pre-COVID. And we've seen increasing voids. So we've been hijacking our tenants. we've just been basically hijacking tenants. So you offer tenants some freebies, you offer them some, and then they move to you and things like that. Retail outlook is mixed. I have all the outlook in my presentation. I'm very passionate about industrial and logistics. Obviously, that's my background, supply chain and warehousing. I also sit as the chairman of a warehousing startup. And I tell you that every time we always have a good problem. We've just taken a major step in the past few weeks to acquire some major distribution hub somewhere around Oregon. We're working on the hub. We do pharmaceutical supply chain, so we have to do the place up. Before we even finish, it's already fully taken up. And that tells you the significance of what is happening in that segment. Unfortunately, people are not looking at that segment. So, what are the future drivers? What are the future drivers of the segment? Regulation. I've been talking about regulatory and compliance intensity for the past 4 years. Compliance and regulatory intensity. There's a strong nexus between real estate regulation and transparency. And transparency is what drives real estate, So now with all these collapses that you see around you, with the attempt to enforce the building code, for you're a player in this industry, you must pay attention to regulation in the future. Prop tech and digital transformation, we cannot talk too much about that, I always say that there are two things that will move the cheese in this industry. The first thing is that we have to be able to commoditize housing and real estate. We have to be able to buy and sell real estate pretty much the same way you buy and sell any other commodity. All the regulations that make it impossible for us to do, we need to get them out of the way. That is the future. We also have to be able to industrialize the process of delivering. We're still building houses. We have to start manufacturing houses. I'm so clear about this, and I was telling the minister in Abuja last week that you cannot do 100,000 houses by calling Baba Sharafa and Baba Toyib and Mukaila to come and build. It's just not going to happen in 4 years. So prop tech, digital transformation, sustainability and green buildings, which Udo has spoken to, integrated urban planning. Incidentally, skyscrapers is an element of land use optimization. So urban planning, bold, innovative financing solutions. You have to start thinking of financing in a very different way. When people when people tell me that they use a bank loan to build, I always wonder that this man is trying to commit suicide, because at the end of the day, the first thing is that for a typical development in Nigeria, gestation period is between 36 to 48 months, if you're lucky, 30 to 48 months, So you can't, that's not what you use 60-day money or 30-day money to finance, You have to sit through and think of the kind of robust framework you use to finance. I think the future belongs to those who are able to do, we have to be able to access the pension funds. And that is by creatively creating asset classes that you can use to access the funds. Data-driven decision-making. The world now is about big data. And I think that for real estate, for the future in Nigeria also belongs. I do some consulting for the police now on housing. And we spent the past 1 year basically profiling off-takers, because I know that whoever has off-taker is the bride of the industry. When I have my 10,000 off-takers now, I will just walk to Kennedy's office, and the conversation is very different, So we're spending time miming the data, synthesizing the data, cleaning the data, so that we can use it much, much, much better. Affordability or accessibility, So in the future, we should be thinking, are we talking of affordability or accessibility? People should not really care whether they own the homes or not. Are you able to access good quality homes when you want it, where you want it? I want to round up by looking at a peep into the future. And like I told you, I like to always look at the ecosystem. Because when you look at the real estate ecosystem in any country, what is happening in that system tells you the future. And what I always try to do is to look at development trends. I see them as real estate confidence boosters. Significant boost for real estate is evidenced by very strong pipeline. So in any economy, you look at the ecosystem, you see very strong pipeline. You see big, audacious projects. You see large and strong pipelines, by various developers. You know that the future looks better. You look at the ecosystem, you see ongoing iconic projects, above $100 million. And then you see massive infrastructural developments to back that up. Real estate thrives off the back of strong macro fundamentals and strong infrastructural framework. So I think that we can go on now. And I think if you look at the Nigerian today, I have quite a number of projects. I have the Dangote refinery, which I've used recently at a project. You can go to the next slide. The U.S. consulate in Lagos, which is going to be the biggest consulate by U.S. anywhere in the world. So you're wondering, why would U.S. be building on a 12.2 acre land in Nigeria? That to me is a very strong confidence booster. I know the next one is the Lagos-Calabar Highway project. I know that's very controversial, but I'm looking at it from the prism of a developer and somebody who is saying what is the positive development that may arise from this. I see that as a strong driver of growth in that ecosystem. Recently, of course, we've seen what First Bank has done, launching that new headquarters in Banana Island. Next, you see, in Eco Atlantic. You see what they've done in Eco Atlantic. You see what Lagos has done with red and blue lines. By the time the red and blue lines is finally connected, and you have the interchange as it's been planned, I'm advising people that you should be thinking, where is the next Allen Avenue? Where is the next Akwonjo Road? I don't know. I know you guys don't know Akwonjo Road, But for those of us who know Akwonjo Road, Akwonjo Road 20 years ago. You know what Akwonjo Road was 20 years ago? I went to Akwonjo Road in the past 3 weeks. I just couldn't believe, So we have to start thinking. And this is what should drive your thought into the future. Where's the next Monastery Road? You see what has happened to Monastery Road in the past since the mall was opened. Look at what has happened to Monastery Road. That is the way I believe that we should be thinking. And the red and blue lines take care. Fort Milan Bridge, again, a bit controversial, so I'm going to just leave that. I look at the pipeline, so I got some information from Estate Intel. I wanted to understand how does the pipeline even look like, and the pipeline is very, very strong, very, 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 very strong pipeline, offline office pipeline, major projects ongoing, some very mind-boggling projects, in the ecosystem. Next slide. You can see pipeline, Ikoyi, VI, Lekki Phase 1, very, very strong pipeline all around, That tells me, peeping into the future, because most of these guys, they don't play, like this generation say, they didn't take those decisions to make those investments very lightly. Major retail, we haven't seen a major retail project recently. Since 2015, what has happened to the retail industry, with what the dollar did to the industry. Everybody ran into the cooler. So people started building neighborhood malls, but this major retail, Oka Mall, is coming and is being developed. Massive investment in data centers. In fact, we are investing massively in data centers, much more than any other country in the world today. Major investment in data centers by everybody. Initially, it was only the was the Rack Center in Oregon, but today you are the one by Main One and other commercial people in this ecosystem. I think we can go on. And I also look at a project like the Arc Legacy Project, and I was privileged to be on this site, last week, even though this is a church project, but this is a $120 million project. And I'm not commenting on the merits whether a church should do this, but it just shows, in terms of positioning of the country, this place is like a tourist center for real estate professionals from all over the world. From China, from France, from, so these are the kind of developments in the ecosystem that excites me. There's a charter house, that school on Ogombo Road, and I'm not saying whether or not people should send their children and pay 42 million per annum. I'm looking at this from the prism of a real estate person. If these are the kind of development I see around me, it helps me to take my decision a lot faster. There's Wigwe University. I've taken a look at the level of infrastructure at Wigwe University. It is simply mind-boggling. So look at next Lackwell Lakes, and the extension that is ongoing at Lackwell Lakes. Next is Simi Lagos. Very futuristic, very, very bold, very audacious, the Macarius luxury place. I was a consultant on this project, when Pastor Ashimolo was going to start, you can see that the guy has gone. He left VI, he left Banana Island, he went near Ekpe, and he had redefined luxury living. Phase 1, phase 2 sold off. Moved on to Macarius Champions Place, and the prices are just heavy, as you will see it, my project also made this list. My project also made this list, because we're launching this project. We're currently on site, actually, and I'm happy to tell you that we also made this list, and we also contribute to the confidence as a confidence-boosting event in the economy. So as I round up, next slide, please. So as I round up, what are we saying about the future? Number one, there's a very fundamental nexus between real estate and the real estate can never run ahead of the economy. We must know. You can't run ahead of the economy. So the economy is critical, But looking into the future, what are the opportunity footprints that I think you should be looking at? Number one, I think we should be looking at student hostel accommodation and care homes. We have just signed a deal with one of the first-generation universities to do 10,000 bed space hostel. And the demand is just amazing. The opportunities are amazing. So rather than everybody just trying to build a terrace and block of flat, and everybody's on TikTok now trying to sell and whatever, look more, look deeper. Significant opportunities for co-living and co-work, So we can begin to, like Udo has mentioned, we can begin to think a lot more creatively about our development, One thing I tell you is that, in those days, and I was also guilty of it, we used to assume for the customer. We used to say that for luxury development, this is what you require: swimming pool, lawn tennis court, this one, that. We used to assume for the customer. But by the time I sat down in circles with them, we discovered that a lot of this, they say, see, my company has already paid for Ikoyi Club for me. In fact, that swimming pool is injurious to my children. I don't want to be at work and be thinking that somebody will throw, and if I want to go to a swimming pool, I will go to Ikoyi Club, or will go to Met Club or Boat Club or something, So we need to begin to think more in sync with the customer going into the future. Crowdfunding. The regulation on crowdfunding has been approved by SEC like 4 years ago, and it is moving. But people are not looking in this direction. We're still thinking that once you just have your project, just apply to a bank and get 3-month facility start, and then begin to roll over. It will not enable you. I've spoken about logistics warehouse and data centers. I can't say too much about that. Real estate notes and digitize. Some companies are very bold. As early as 4 or 5 years ago, about 3 people, they've already issued real estate notes, But we also have to start to think digital. We're already talking of tokenization of assets. I have my issue, I have my, the only caveat I always enter when we talk of unitization, digitization is that when people buy, so let's, for example, NBCC decides to list this building, and so you unitize the value and you convert those units to tokens and you sell tokens to people. So people buy tokens, 1,000, 2,000 and things like that, Those who have bought the tokens, they have bought in expectation of a return. Now, that return will come from the optimal management of the assets physically, not from what happens on the digital space, So the base is still very critical in terms of what we need to be thinking about. Co-investing, joint ventures, neighborhood retail centers, and of course, urban regeneration, I do think that, it's a very challenging market. I always choose to look at, I'm a pastor, so I always like to wear my pastor's hat. And what the Bible says is that he who has bountiful eyes shall be blessed. And to have bountiful eyes is to look at opportunities when people are talking about problems. So I always like to think solutions. I like to think ahead of the problems. It's a challenging market, difficult market. I see a lot of people on TikTok these days criticizing developers. These are people who have never bought a plot of land. They don't know what it takes to do approval. I would just hear, this is a property in Banana Island. This is another property in Dubai. And I think, do you know that in Dubai, cost of fund is 3 to 4%. The man in Banana Island has borrowed at MPR in this country is 27.5%. Everything is priced off the back of MPRs, But we have to look beyond that. We have to be bold. We have to be audacious. We have to engage. We have to be a lot stronger in our advocacy, as we have always done. And I'm sure that by so doing, we will still be able to drive this segment into the future. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you very much, sir. Next up, we're going to be having our panel session, but first off, I'm going to be introducing our moderator. His name is Mr. Odunaya Ojo, Managing Director, and he's represented by Mr. Priye Johnson, Chief Commercial Officer, UPDC. Mr. Priye Johnson is the Chief Commercial Officer, brings over 22 years of versatile experience across real estate development with a focus on strategy, business growth design, project management, and revenue assurance. Mr. Priye holds an MSc in Marketing and Management from the University of Bradford, UK, and a bachelor's degree in Economics from the University of Port Harcourt. His previous roles include serving as a COO of MHF Properties Limited. Please join me as I welcome the moderator.
So good morning, everyone, once again. And I believe we've had a very exciting time listening to Udo Okonjo and Mr. Akim Oguniro. So we'll go into the panel session. But before I do that, let me just give some insights as to what I gained from the presentation from both parties. So I love the way Mrs. Okonjo approached the theme. Floating cities, skyscrapers, and technology-driven living. I like the way she made us understand that it's all about ideas and leadership. And it kind of grounded that the theme to me, because when I heard the theme as well, I felt, why are we talking about these very futuristic type things? But it's good that we view it from the point of creating ideas, building leadership. And she asked some very good questions, posers. If you were given the opportunity today to rebuild Lagos or VI or even this building, what would you do? And it got me thinking. And I think every real estate developer, anyone that is involved in real estate, is a good thing to think about. For Mr. Oguniran, I liked all the trends that he set. Urbanization is a key factor. There are immeasurable opportunities when he showed the graph relating to the size of Africa and the opportunity, the size of Africa relative to the world and the size of our real estate. A lot could still happen there. In terms of drivers, regulation, PropTech, sustainability, and the green opportunities are all issues that will drive the real estate sector going forward. So without much further ado, let me invite the panelists to the stage. They've all been fully introduced, so we might not need to do any further introduction to them. Mr. Akin Opatola, please, you can come to. Mrs. Nicole Bree, please join Akin on the podium. Mr. Oguniran, Hakeem Oguniran, please. And of course, Mrs. Udo Okonjo. So I'll also take my seat. I think a good place to start would be talking about this theme and why we think it is important today. What excites you the most about the future of real estate? I want to start with Akim, that's sitting right next to me.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. So for me, when I was first introduced to the topic about 2 weeks ago, I was excited. I like to think of myself as a visionaire in real estate. So of course, the topic is quite futuristic, and I thought it would resonate with a lot of people. So I'm the chapter president for an international real estate federation. And we get to speak about a lot of the themes and conversations that we've had today. Urbanization, pollution, sustainability, smart cities, innovative cities, AI, and the entire ecosystem. So, as Mrs. Udo Okonjo and Mr. Hakeem has eloquently put it, and to take a specific analogy that Mrs. Okonjo used, Elon Musk. Elon Musk is an entrepreneur. He has done amazingly well. And he has been able to think forward using ideas, using leadership. And I thought that this theme will enable us to also be able to project and also think forward. When we think about ideas around skyscrapers, I was thrilled to see what First Bank is doing at Eco Atlantic. I believe MTN and a few other multinationals are also planning to do high-rise skyscrapers. Case in point, I would pick the Chad skyscraper in the UK. Amazing mixed-use development, about 95 floors. Apart from the rental income they make, if I had to put it in Nigerian context, they typically make annually about 38 billion. That's about roughly about close to 20 million pounds annually from residential, from outside outside rental revenues. There's an observatory deck at the rooftop, and people go there even from a tourism standpoint. So those are the ideas that I thought this theme will be able to show real estate players, innovators, urban planners, and a lot of the realtors in the room to be able to think and also project in that line. Thank you.
Excellent. What about you, Bree? What excites you most about the future of real estate?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an opportunity being here with you, with all of you. Thank you again for that. So what I totally believe in our real estate now, what really counts for the future, our vision is about green building technology, basically. So we have to have green building technology should be integrated in our large-scale skyscrapers and floating cities. And what do I mean by green building? So the large-scale real estate project like skyscrapers and floating city requires smart solutions to reduce their environmental impact while ensuring they remain livable and efficient. So the first thing in green building technology are solar systems. So solar systems are key. So we do have solar panel and wind turbine that could be used to generate clean energy. So a skyscraper can have solar panel on their rooftop, while floating city, they can use wind turbines for power. And AI also driven management can track energy usage and automatically adjust lighting, cooling, and heating to reduce waste. For example, all of us, I guess we know the Burj Khalifa in Dubai that uses high-efficient cooling system that saves energy in extreme heat. The second thing in green building technology, also usage of sustainable building material. I work in Construct as Chief Sales Officer. So what we do is that we sell building materials. And what we are trying to incorporate in our catalog now is sustainable building materials. What do I mean by sustainable building materials? They are low carbon concrete and recycled steel. They help reduce the carbon footprint, which is actually the amount of carbon dioxide emission of large building. So self-healing, we do have self-healing concrete that repairs small cracks on its own, extending the lifespan of structure with less maintenance. An example of that, there is a building in Amsterdam called the Edge Building that uses sustainable energy and is one of the world's most energy efficient office building. The last thing I think that is really key in green building technology is water conservation and recycling. Also, this is key. So we could use rainwater, we could use sewage water that could be recycled and used for our daily use. For example, in rainwater collection and purification, allow floating cities to collect and filter rainwater for drinking and daily use. Also, sewage water could be treated and could be reused for flushing and maybe for irrigation. And the best example of that, in Singapore, there's the Singapore Marina Bay Sand that has a system that collects and reuses rainwater, significantly reducing water waste. So basically, I totally believe in the future and the vision in real estate where it should be integrated with green building materials. And this is what we are doing now in Construct.
Excellent. Okay. So all these are very nice to have, but in terms of affordability, how do you... Is there a balance between, going green and affordability, especially for developers?
Yeah, thank you for that. Is it working? Can you? Yes, I guess it's now. So sustainability and affordability often seem at odds in construction, actually. So green materials and energy-efficient technology can be expensive. However, developer can balance sustainability and affordability by focusing on energy-efficient design, usually using also locally sourced and recycled material, implementing renewable energy system, seeking government incentive, which is also key, and promoting public awareness. So I totally believe, first of all, in the design of the buildings. This is where we should prioritize energy-efficient design. By designing the building itself, we can lower utility costs for occupants and minimize environmental impact. So one key strategy is passive design, which involves orienting buildings to maximize natural light and airflow. This reduces the need of use of air conditions and artificial lighting. Second of all, as I always emphasize, is that to use the recyclable and the local sustainable building materials that we have. For example, we are using currently some bamboo or some recycled steel to use as reinforcement. Even also we do have compressed earth block. They use minimal cement and a little bit of soil. Basically also they are eco-friendly option. Also what should be also stressed out is that prefabricated and modular construction, where building components are made in a factory and assembled on site, reduces weight and speeds up construction. We can see now more and more steel construction along the city, and also, always in the US, we always work with prefabricated housing. So this also could be incorporated here for the future. Also, as I was saying, is talking about the seeking government incentive, which is really key. So to make that will help us include tax break, low interest green loan, and grants also for eco-friendly development. So also government has a key in kind of like sustaining and give us good loans and good mortgage in order to do eco-friendly development. At the end, and also this is really key, promote public awareness. So everyone should be aware, so all of us can work together to build a better future and green building development in this country. So we need to educate consumers, investors, policymakers on the benefit of green construction, which increases demand for sustainable buildings and drive policy changes. And when the demand increases, so it means that the supply will be more affordable and you'll get more competitive prices. Marketing green homes as cost-saving investment by showcasing how energy-efficient buildings lead to lower utility bills. So now most of the skyscrapers, we are selling some building materials, they are using solar panels. So it has become basically kind of like you are buying reinforcement or cement for these buildings. They are looking for solar panels and for companies to work with to help them do that. Also, we have to partner with school and university. We have to educate our young and ensure that future architect and developer prioritize eco-friendly designs. Of course, social media is everywhere, so everyone is on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever. So social media and public campaign raise awareness about sustainable living habits like energy conservation and waste reduction. This also helps to create a culture of sustainability. And by combining financial incentive and public education, developer can make sustainable buildings more affordable and more accessible and widely accepted.
Okay, thank you for that. Mrs. Okonjo, I know we don't mention affordability and luxury living under the same breath. So in the luxury segment, what do you see in the future in given the Nigerian context? You know, if you can maybe relate this to what you've seen in other cities and where you think Nigeria will be headed in the future in the luxury segment of the market.
Thank you. Is this on? Can you hear? Yeah, okay. All right, fine. Thank you for the question. I mean, Hakim had mentioned how real estate mirrors the economy. So even though, it's been indicated that the luxury real estate segment is somewhat resilient, I use the word somewhat, because even people at that level, investors at that level, as it were, have options. So the world is not just one location. right? So investors at that level don't just think in terms of Lagos or Nigeria. They think, where can I get the best value for my investment? Once it goes beyond your social needs, your home to live in or your secondary home, it's now about return on investment. So from that point of view, there's always that tension about where to put in money and whether you're going to get the returns. However, when you go beyond that to people who actually need homes, the concept of affordability cuts across all levels of the real estate market. So even if you want to buy in Victoria Island, you want to buy in Ikoyi, you want to buy in Oniru, you want to buy in Lekki, you're always looking for, I want to use a different word, value, right? So as we sit now in Ikoyi, Victoria Island, and these environs, there are properties that are priced in other currencies, the US dollar being the most normal. But in those same locations, there are properties that are priced in Naira. Just looking at the, paradox that has existed with fluctuation, the devaluation of Naira, inflation, all that stuff, real value seekers will be looking for properties that are priced in Naira. From that point of view, there's an affordability conversation. Because if a property is, say, 800 million Naira, in today's money, in dollars, it's about $500 and something thousand. Whoever is making that decision to put that property on the market in Naira must have a reason. They must have created the kinds of property that they've built in an, in quote, affordable manner, whether it's by reducing the sizes, whether it's by reducing certain features. For example, if you want to move from Lekki, as some of our clients, or from VGC to Ikoyi, maybe you're not looking for the same size of housing. Maybe you're not looking for, fancy tiles, fancy finishings, fittings from big brand names. Maybe now you're looking at some tiles that have been made in Nigeria, for example. You mentioned some of the things. So it's about looking back and saying, how can we value engineer properties, development through design, finishings, such that it's more affordable, irrespective of the location. So, yes, there will always be dollar-denominated properties for those who are not price-sensitive, and that's really your 0.1%. So, as you were saying, you can be on TikTok, complain about what the price of Banana Island is or Eco Atlantic or whatever. The people who are investing are astute investors, so don't feel sorry for them. Don't stop wasting your time on, what they're doing. Instead, focus on what can I invest in that makes sense. I did an analysis a few weeks ago. We did an analysis at Fine & Country looking at Banana Island. It was sold, the plot of land in Banana Island 20 so odd years ago was sold, started at 7 million Naira. Today, the price of land in Banana Island for the same 1,000 square meters is upwards of 2 billion Naira. Right? For those who say you convert it to dollar, and you do the math, it's still not done with. It's actually, we did the math, it's more than 40,000% appreciation. Why do I bring this to the conversation about affordability? The fact of the matter is that affordability is a subjective concept. There's affordability in luxury, there's affordability in the mid-tier, there's affordability in the entry point. It's about always, one, you are looking for the right opportunities before they become, in quote, overpriced. So that's where, once again, in real estate, as an investor, it's about vision. By the way, Hakim's presentation was, absolutely brilliant, but extremely insightful because it was extremely comprehensive. So he was not just showing us Nigeria or Lagos real estate for today, but he's pointing us and saying, when this rail happens, where is the new market going to be? So affordability is also about foresight. Lackaway is not the same price it was 10 years ago. It's taken 10 years. Eco Atlantic and all of that. So what do I want to say about affordability and about accessibility? One is that it is subjective. Instead of worrying about the prices of things, ask, what can I afford today? The second thing is, what can I bet on for tomorrow? Because the people who are making money from real estate, who are, creating value from real estate, are those who have foresight. And then those who also have courage. When the Shaguris started Eco Atlantic, it seemed like a pipe dream. Right? So I'm going to leave it there, but I hope that, some of the principles have come out, which is that affordability is contextual, it is subjective, and every sector has the concept of affordability. If I want to buy property in Ikoyi today, I'm going to be looking for the one that I can afford. Ideally, one that is priced in Naira. I personally believe that in the next few years, most of the properties will be benchmarked and potentially priced in dollars, unless, of course, the government does something specific about pricing, currency, and all of that stuff. But that's a different conversation. So let me throw that back to you. Hopefully, if we go there, we go there. But for now, I would say affordability is something that every investor thinks about, when they're making an investment. If I have 1 billion, I'm going to say, where's going to be the best use of my 1 billion naira or my 100 million? Is it going to be in Ikeja? Is it in Okokomaiko? Is it in Makoko? If the rail comes and I went to invest in, I remember in those days, Isheri. There's a place, Isheri. Years ago, when my father was working in the judiciary and, my mom bought land in Isheri. I think maybe it was 10 naira or 100 naira or something. Isheri seemed like the end of the world. A couple years ago, I drove there from Ikoyi. It took me all of 15 minutes. That's where I believe Channels TV is. Do you see what I mean? So it's really about foresight. So if you can't afford Banana Island at 2 billion, are there places that are 1 million? There are. Ikorodu is not even affordable anymore. So what is affordability? So I just want to expand our minds around that concept. Thank you.
Okay. Please go ahead. So are you actually saying when people talk about a bubble in the real estate industry, especially in some locations, these high prices we hear in banana and all that, what are your views on them? Is it that there's no bubble, or you believe maybe, given the kind of rates we're seeing, this might crash someday?
That's one of my favorite questions, actually. It's interesting you should ask that. I feel like if I have 1 naira for every time someone asks me 2 questions. One is, all these tall buildings in Ikoyi, they're empty. Why? Who is buying? And, and invariably they're heading to saying it's a bubble. Here's what I think. First of all, Nigeria is a developing economy. Developing, the word developing simply means, as we all know, I'm just going to go back to the baselines just to make it, as simple as I can, is a place of growth and opportunities, which has been demonstrated by the presentation that was made. If you look at, let's say it's 100 trillion real estate value globally. What part is Nigeria contributing currently? If you look at our population, 200 million, depending on who you're talking to, and we have about 25% home ownership. When it comes to mortgages, it's less than 2%. We haven't started. In fact, my position is that the real estate industry and market really hasn't started to exist yet in Nigeria. Because without mortgages, which is actually the real backdrop of any vibrant real estate economy. For example, years ago, we used to represent Nigerian professionals, managers, assistant managers, professionals. I'm not talking about bank MDs or owners of banks. I'm talking about regular working people to invest in South Africa, to invest in Dubai, and to invest in London. Why? This was 20 years ago. Because using their salary, they could contribute 250,000 naira and it would be a deposit on a property. So they could not buy in Nigeria because there was no mortgage, but we bought them properties in these locations because they had access to mortgages. That's how hundreds of professionals invested in places where there's a real thriving real estate market, right? So taking away from that, our country is still developing, and I believe the financial system is developing. I believe that with the right leadership, as we continue to build, we'll get to a point where the real estate market will start, where you and I, anybody, I'm sure if I took a poll in this room, we probably won't have, I do that all the time, we probably may not have 100% of the people here at this level who are professionals owning their own homes, right? Until that is possible, my father, who was a civil servant, I still remember when he bought his 2 homes using the Nigerian mortgage system then, because as a civil servant, he had access, and he bought those bungalows on the street in Benin City, even though we lived in Kano, right, using the access to mortgage. And he bought those homes, I believe, at the time, 5 million naira and 3 million naira, 2 homes side by side. When he retired, that's where he moved to. Why was he able to do that? Because civil servants had access to, and so that was now about affordability, that was that. So to your question about the bubble, for as long as the demand is there, and the supply, if you count how many projects are going on in Ikoyi, how many units are they delivering over the next 5 years? It's not 500 units. It's not 500 units, if you count. Do we have 1,000? Do we have 5,000 people who can afford properties in that location over the next 5 years? The answer is yes. Yeah. If you take Lekki, if you take Abuja, if you take Kano, Enugu, wherever you want to take, what is my point? The bubble that we're talking about, each time we talk about the bubble, just look at the fundamentals. Our inflation rate, let's look at, devaluation, let's look at the economic indices, and you know that ultimately it's only up. When you look at demand, you look at the young population, we're the youngest continent, right? The housing dynamics will change. People are not going to be looking for mansions. They don't need it because we're going to have a migrant population. Young people who can live in Enugu and do work in China. Young people who are going to live in Oregon or even Mowe or Ogun State, even Ibadan, when you have the right infrastructure, and do business in Gabon, in Shanghai, or whatever. What am I saying? Banana Island is limited. For the last 2 years, we've been looking for plots for some of our clients. It now takes anywhere from 9 months to 15 months, if not more. Maybe that's my cue. It now takes, close to a year to find the property that you're looking for, whether it's Banana, whether it's Shoreline, whether it's anywhere in the prime commercial. So from my personal point of view, from our data, there's no bubble, and the only bubble-like angle that I'd like to pull out to give us a more concrete, comprehensive outlook is to pay attention to properties that are priced in dollars, because over time, some of them, not all, some of them will become local currency denominated, because as new builds come up, the old ones that were priced in dollars will adjust to Naira. So what then happens is that I'll give you a real case study. A property that was in Ikoyi that was $1 million, bought, about 10 years ago. Now you want to sell, but now it's been priced in Naira. At the time, it was about 250 million Naira. Now, if you want to sell that same property and you put it in Naira and you say, it's $1 million, you're now saying it's 1.5 billion Naira. So the question is there value in that same property? It's now 10 years old. Does everyone see that? So that's the bubble. That's the bubble. That's what we need to pay attention to. That said, people who buy exclusive, limited, especially branded, when I say branded, management is important, how the property is kept and maintained, the people who live there and how it's kept. And the fewer they are, the higher the possibility of maintaining the value. So there's still some properties that are priced in dollars, and 5 years later, 10 years later, they still might, because the people who live there are not really trying to sell. So I'm just saying that I know in real estate it's very interesting when we throw things, when we have this quite exciting conversation, but actually real estate investors are long game players. So from the beginning, you make money when you buy real estate, not when you sell. So if you understand what you're doing, you will be creating the bubble. The bubble will not be busting on your head, basically. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was well said. I want to dwell on this just a bit more. And I'll pose this question to Mr. Oguniro and see what his views are on it. You know, you mentioned investors, right? People that put their monies in real estate purely from an investment point of view. And you've spoken about this coming in with your $1 million when the building is all new. And 4 years, 5 years down the line, you want to sell, you actually cannot sell at the equivalent of $1 million, which invariably means as an investor, you are losing money or you have lost money. If this is a is that not the bubble in itself that people are saying these properties are overpriced and they cannot maintain value? Mr. Oguniro, I don't know if you have any insight into this.
This is better. So first of all, I always like to say that in real estate, the focus should be on ROE, return on equity. But there are two other ROEs that drive people's decisions. There is return on ego, is also ROE. And there is return on emotion, is also ROE. As an astute real estate investor, you should be driven by the single ROE, return on equity. If that is your driver, I always say that investment capital is rational. You can always predict where investment capital will go. They travel in particular directions. What are the critical drivers? Risk, return, and regulation. I always call them the 3 R's. So at the end of the day, when you are taking buying decisions in real estate, you must be very careful to understand that you are not throwing away value at the time you are making your investment. If you do, you cannot recover. And that's the point that Udo is making. Real estate will always appreciate. We've seen cases all over. In year 2005, 2006. Let's leave Lagos Island. Let's go to the mainland. 2006, Medina Estate in Bagada was selling for 2 million, 3 million. Medina Estate today goes for 250 million. 200 to 50 million. If you're not in a hurry, you will sell for 250. If you're in a hurry, you will sell for 200. If you calculate the percentage of appreciation, it is simply mind-boggling. Now, this is what I think about bubble, because I always listen to a lot of the analysts, particularly the economists. I enjoy them when they say there is void there, there is void there, there is void there. I always look at this thing from a very simple angle: demand and supply. That is what drives whether or not there will ever be bubbles. Number one, we're not building enough. I agree. I was giving an example in Abuja yesterday. I attended a seminar in the US in 2018, Narrate. And at that seminar, there was a fireside chat with a guy called Sam Zell. That was one of the biggest, is late now. This was in 2018. And they asked him that how was business the previous year, 2017? Oh, and the guy said business wasn't very good in 2017 because they only managed to add 508,000 units to their of buildings and apartments to their portfolio. So when he finished, as a Niger, I went to meet him. That Oga, did you see 58 508 or 580. Oh, the guy said 508,000, Now, add all of us, all the developers in Nigeria together. Put all of us in. We're not doing 50,000 units per annum. Because the process of delivering houses in this country is very, very tough. So you have a huge population. You have people always underestimate the depth of the retail market in this country. I'd led my company to float a REIT before. And when we floated the REIT, I was chasing institutional investors all over the world. I was chasing institutional investors all over the world. By the time the result of the REIT investment came, we talked about that the retail market was by far stronger than what anybody will have anticipated. So we always underestimate the depth of the retail market, And in real estate, you have to look beyond the immediate. You have to take a medium to long-term view of your investment. You cannot just say because something happened yesterday, this one. You have to look into the horizon. And that is why it is for those who are smart. It is for those who watch the trend. It is not for those that you sit in your office, somebody just comes to make PowerPoint presentation, and then they show you a rainbow and Said Balogun, and then you quickly put money. That is not real estate investment. It is for those who will take all the steps to do due diligence. You sit down, you peep into the future, and you ask very critical questions. Am I investing for now? Am I investing for next year? Or am I investing, do I have funds that I can use to, just imagine, in those days, once you pass Morocco, anywhere from after Morocco to Ekpe was bush. Some people understood the future, and they made those investments. You see, but they say there's a Japanese, is it Chinese or Japanese proverb that the best time to build a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time is now. That is how to look at real estate. I understand that the Igbo people say that anytime you wake up is your morning. So you have to look at your position today and see the kind of position you want to take into the future. Ask critical questions. That's what I always do. Where is the next Allen Avenue? In 1985, when I followed my Oga for naming ceremony somewhere in Okwebi, if they asked me to come and take the land free of charge, I would say no. We went inside the bush, before we go to the place. I was like, what is this man doing in this? How can somebody come and be? We were living in Agege. And I was criticizing this man that, is this man not stupid? What is he doing in this Okwebi? But the man was future-driven. Today, I'm sure that same property that he bought today will be untouchable. So that's the way we need to see real estate. Do not wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait, is what we say. And that's how we need to look at it. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me dwell with you a bit more as a developer. In terms of the challenges facing developers, high interest rates, and the plethora of issues around titling, regulation, and all that, how are you coping as a developer to circumvent these difficulties?
Okay, maybe circumvent is not the right word. The right word is
navigate.
How do you navigate? I think you have to understand your positioning in the industry. You have to have clarity of what you want to do. You have to have clarity of the market you want to serve. You have to, the challenge I have is that you say a developer who has never done 30 houses, and then they launch, they're building 2,000, 5,000, Even when I ran a big PLC, we did our project in phases. The reason is simple. You don't want to have project indigestion. So the first thing is that you have to be clear about your positioning. Your vision must be clear. The market you want to serve must be very, very clear. Once you have that, then you need to have a process that is in sync with regulation. The way I run my business, I will not till the land unless I have all my papers. So I always tell my customers that it is impossible to find my name, maybe because of my UAC background. You cannot find the name of my development in anyone. When they were demolishing in Maryland or in Bagada, I didn't lose my sleep because I knew that all my projects, we had gone through proper permitting and approval process. It is very, very important, So that's how we navigate. In terms of funding, I always say that real estate is a financing game. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how bright your ideas are. If there's no money to deliver those ideas, you are not starting. And you have to always watch your ball. You have to always be able to match your assets and liabilities sustainably in the long term. If you can't do that, so the first thing you do is that you don't put too many eggs, you don't put too many wood in the fire at the same time, so you don't get stuck along the way. Do what you can do. Be clear about your pipeline, have a very clear, in my business, I don't buy land. I only do JVs. It is my strategy. Because what I was taught in strategy school, strategy is not just what you will do, it is also what you will not do. So my strategy is that do JVs, share the risk, share the reward. That is my strategy. With that, we have built our pipeline of projects because there are people who also have land, who don't know what to do with the land, or who don't know how to do anything with the land. So we've aligned our strengths, we've aligned our purpose, and we're able to deliver. Funding in a country where MPR is 27.5, where T-bill is selling from between 15 to 20%, it will also be a very, very big issue, funding real estate. You just can't compete. Let's not deceive ourselves. You can't compete. You can't compete. If I were a treasury manager in a PFA, and I know that if I invest in T-bill, I will get 17, 18%. I will not bet myself on any real estate development where you have to buy land, deal with Omonile, take market risk, take all the risk. In the future, I think that the solution will lie in the industry creating a platform to create assets that can attract long-term funding. Mr. Olubunmi is there as the CEO of NMRC. He knows the challenges, but it's because everybody is working in silos. Now, Mofi has just raised 250 billion naira, 150 billion naira from government, 100 billion naira from investment. That is a step in the right direction. And they are putting the money at the two legs of the ecosystem, both demand and supply. At the end of the day, the kind of funding approach, I understood this a long time ago. And that was why in my previous life, I was always ready to go to the market. In 8 years, I was in the market 5 times. Did bond 2 times, floated a REIT. When they started FMDQ, I was the first to go to FMDQ to do bridge funding. Because the capital market is supposed to be the aggregator that puts funds together for long-term development. You have access to a wider pool of people. You can negotiate better. When we floated a bond in 2010, it was a 15 billion naira bond, 5-year tenure, 2-year moratorium. Coupon rate was 10%. Nothing can be more beautiful than that. Then you have a breathing space to do your development. That, I think, is the way developers have to start to think. Going to the bank, taking 90-day money, renew it for, is it renew? Roll it over for another 90 days will never deliver good real estate projects for you and good returns. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so let me come back home to the theme and this whole concept about floating cities. And I'll pose this question to you, Akin. Are we really close to seeing this concept come to reality in Nigeria? Apart from Makoko, which, as Mrs. Okonjo put it, came out of a struggle or hardship. Do you think we're at that point where we should start actively thinking about floating cities as a segment in our real estate journey?
All right, thank you. So the quick answer to that will be yes. I think it's something that we need to put at the back of our minds now. And this is future-proofing and looking forward at our real estate plans. And I say that because, so at the moment, there is nothing. So when you say floating cities, it's not a city that is literally floating or a building. It is a platform, like Mrs. Udo Okonjo has said. It is a platform where you can build on top of it. That platform floats. So land, as we all know, they don't make it anymore. And she did give the distinction with Eco Atlantic, where you have to sand fill and banana. You know, it has its challenges as it affects the ecosystem and with the conversations around climate change. So sand filling is not a long-term smart way. It is the future for building, looking at urbanization, looking at the population. Currently, we're close to 8.3 billion. We have about 1.2 billion homeless people. Building vertically smart, high-rise buildings in a lot of these mega cities. We've seen them in Singapore, in Tokyo, in China. It is the only sustainable way to develop. And I see developers here also planning and thinking in that regard, because we take a lot of these novel ideas from there. And a friend was sharing with me a few days ago and says, look, is Nigeria ready to host the World Cup? And I said, with the concept of floating buildings, floating cities, the answer is yes. So Lusail Stadium in the UAE, they hosted the last World Cup. They built that stadium with close to $1 billion. I doubt if that stadium will see that kind of capacity again. And the question did pop to my head that if that kind of stadium was built on a floating platform, they could move it to other cities. Canada is co-hosting the World Cup. They can move it to Lagos and around the world so that you can share resources, collaborate, and partnership. And I think that's the conversation. Thank you.
Interesting. Okay, so because of time, we will round up, and I'll give each speaker just about a minute or less to predict for us what they think the future in the next 20 years might look like for real estate in Nigeria. I'll start with you, Mr. Oguniro.
Well, you're starting with
1 minute
with a pensioner. I think 20 years, how real estate will look will also depend on how the economy has fared. But I think in 20 years, we're going to be seeing many new cities. I think a lot of governments are now embracing GIS. I was at a seminar in Abuja in the past 2 weeks. I've seen that even at federal government level, even at various state levels, they're already embracing blockchain, AI, all this that we've been talking about for the past few years. And so I think technology will lead to boom in some areas. We've done very well. Okay, you said 1 minute. We've done very well as a country using technology in asset management. We also have to start deploying technology in asset creation so that everything will balance very well, as they say. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Ms. Okonjo?
Thank you. I want to take it from the point of view of ESG as a concept that is very front and center with, with corporates, with businesses, but in real estate, we've not actually started applying and thinking about, and yet today we've referred to it in many ways. When Akin talked about the floating cities, sharing, collaboration, all of that stuff. What we're really talking about is sustainability. What we're talking about is environmental factors. We're talking about the planet, all of that. How do we become more efficient, as it were? So the conversation in the real estate space over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, I believe that the environmental factors will become a big conversation. Eco-Atlantic was built on the back of that. I won't go into the long details because it's a 1 minute, not that I have the technicals, but environmental factors are big. There's global warming. We're seeing what's happening. We can't ignore it anymore. The S in ESG, which represents social, the angle that I'm looking at is the people, the demographics that we're looking at. If we continue to think about real estate only from an infrastructure point of view and not think about the social impact, the people who are left behind, the millions of people who are under the bridge, we don't think about social housing. We don't think about housing. You can't talk about democracy without talking about housing for all. There's a reason why in the UK, even in the most affluent places, locations, they have affordable housing for police people, for critical workers, people who work in the hospitals, and they make it affordable for them through different devices. So the social aspect of real estate is something that we can't continue to ignore. And then finally is governance. We've seen all the collapsed buildings happening and all of that. I see a future where that's not going to happen because we have the leadership that does the right things and that enforces the right things. Because it's not for want of regulation that those things happen, but it's actually about how do we ensure that we have real standards and those standards are enforced by all stakeholders in the industry. So that's where I'd leave it. Environmental, social, and governance factors in the real estate space. Thank you.
Bri?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually. So the future in 20 years, as I said, of course, is green building, so eco-friendly building, housing facilities, which is really key to make affordable houses for everyone. And, of course, we should have government incentive that will help us do that. And we should count less on oil and count more on our sun that is there. So eco-friendly real estate development is the future in this country, and this is how I see it.
Anakin?
Okay, for me, I see the distinction between entrepreneurs that we see here now with these developers doing amazing things here, and the aquapreneurs. The aquapreneurs are those future innovators that would want to build floating cities, skyscrapers, even on floating platforms, even on the water. 10 years, 20 years from now, I see exciting things. I did mention the First Bank new head office. I see competition there. 46 floors. Then somebody else will say, let me do 49. Let me do 52. And I see healthy competition there. In retail, we saw in December, back of the dirty December, the Purple Mall, mixed use, doing splendidly. I see a lot of healthy competition even in that space. I see a lot of collaboration, partnerships, because we cannot continue to work in silos. It is definitely not sustainable, as Mrs. Okonjo said. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I think we've had a very useful conversation, and I want everybody here to at least give the panelists a round of applause. I don't know if we have time for just one or two questions from the audience. Then we close. I see someone over there.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Vincent Tawi. We've been here for quite a while, and I know that there is what we call Federal Mortgage Bank. In all our discussions here, I never seem to have heard anything about it. And we're looking at 20 years coming, and the role of the Federal Mortgage Bank was never mentioned. I don't know. I would like a little bit of light to be thrown upon this. Thank you.
We take one more, and there's someone here.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask the professionals here that my question is about collaboration, regulation, and quality control. Because in most cases, when I get to some sites, it looks as if it's a game of two worlds. Some are going this way, while the others are going the other opposite ways. While we are trying to move toward the floating cities and the green buildings, you will find developers, and developers mostly, when there are some rules or regulations to be followed in building of their properties, you see they follow the opposite ways. And when you go to the regulating agencies or bodies, you find out that they are already been there before you are there. So what are the professionals in the industry doing to ensure that we all go the same way so that we can achieve all we envisage to see in the next 20 years?
Okay, thank you. On the mortgage. Oh, please. Please go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think, I said Dr. Okonjo. Mrs. Okonjo mentioned it. She said everywhere in the world, mortgages are the way to go. So that encapsulates Federal Mortgage Bank, NMRC, MOFI, which Mr. Akim Oguniro mentioned, family homes funds, all the banks, So if you want us to be specific, we can spend the next 10 minutes just listing all the institutions that will provide the mortgages. But I think it was captured in all the comments that were said that the only way to go into the future is getting the right mortgage and all of that. But there are so many institutions that can provide that. Federal Mortgage Bank is one of them. There are other mortgage institutions that can also do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And on the question of quality control, flouting regulatory issues and all that. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Thanks for that question. I think it's such an important question. And when I was referring to governance, and I talked about collapsed buildings and all of that stuff, it's very critical that we have, if you think about like hotels, you have the 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, that sort of thing. The standards organizations that are able to rate and track development and developer credibility, as it were, to what extent do they follow, the rules, the regulations, all that stuff. Of course, for astute investors, they have to go through a list. For example, if a bank is funding something, they will check. Is it built to code, the zoning permit, all of those things. Sometimes you have 5,000 square meters, you only meant to put 10 units on it, and people put 50, right? If you as an investor were to invest in that, what would happen is that one day the Pharaoh that doesn't know Moses or, the person in power will come and you will lose your property, which is what's been happening along the corridor. So it's important that education is a part of the industry. And that's why what the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, the real estate and construction, division is doing is super important, because stakeholders have to be educated to understand the questions to ask. In our firm, when our clients come when they want to invest, we have a questionnaire. Even as a developer, if we're going to take on your project, we have a questionnaire that is almost 30 questions that you have to go through. What are we looking for? We're looking to establish that you have followed the standards. But it's not enough for it to be individual investors. It has to be a systemic thing so that we don't have, real challenges. But those challenges exist, and you are right, and it's because we don't have real standards being enforced. And so it's one of the things that I think is very important about the future, that we have a country where in this built environment, we don't have just silos where the architects association, the engineers and all of that, but especially in the development space, if we can have like a standards organization that tracks and rates the developers and the development and actually lists them so that people can, look. I mean, in today's world, if you go to a hotel, you go online, you can see what people are saying. Do we have anything like that, right? So standards are super important, but it's not always going to be government-led. It can be citizen-led also. Thanks for the question.
And on that note, I think we've come to...
Before you sound in... last year, NBCC here, we organized a program on building collapse, and we were just trying to contribute our own little. And I noticed that immediately after we organized that program, everybody started to hold programs on building collapse. So I think, as Udo has said, I think the game is going to change. In those days, you would never believe that a government will come that will pull down a whole estate. That will pull down. Before we had always thought that once you cry, just quickly build. Once you go to government and you kneel down and you prostrate. But we've seen that truly. The standards of enforcement has gone up. We've seen what has happened in Lagos and Abuja. But I think the government needs to do a lot more. When people, part of the challenge I have with building collapse is that I've not seen the law punish anybody significantly, at least not for the high-profile collapses. I think we make some examples. That is what is going to grant the deterrence in the environment. And incidentally, I think Akin is shy to mention that FIAPSI is holding World Congress in Nigeria. FIAPSI Nigeria is actually holding World Congress in June this year. And one of the tracks is on regulation and things like that, bringing best practice from other parts of the world also to see what will be happening in this country, And we collaborate. As you can see, this is a collaboration between us and FIAPSI, and we're also going to take a major part in that respect. Thank you. Now you can sound your notes.
So thank you, speakers. I know people are still requesting to make questions, but because of time, we'll have to call it a wrap. Thank you, everyone.
Media, please let's have the sponsors video from UPDC.
Finally, we are handing over the plots to our subscribers here at the Hampshire Shomgotedu. A deep feeling of joy fills us at UPDC whenever we see our subscribers' faces brighten up with great pleasure and happiness whenever we deliver our projects as promised. And it gladdens our hearts when they sign their title documents and take possession of their plots. And it's something that gives us the confidence to move forward. This was the state of the site before we commenced construction. And this is our and it's something that gives us the confidence to move forward. This was the state of the site before we commenced construction, and this is our progress in December 2024. Now, let's listen to some testimonials from our subscribers and people involved in the Hampshire.
One of the key things that I think sets us apart is the security. I mean, if you look around, you find cameras. Every street has a camera. And one of the other things, which I think is a major for this, is that it has a central sewage system, such that each plot doesn't have to provide a septic tank or a soakaway, which is a major challenge for houses in this area.
During the Hampshire's handover, our clients were excited to see the steady and progressive development on site, which contributed to the success of the handover event.
UPDC is a name in the industry. I came by faith anyway, not knowing what will happen, but with this development, I could say you have exceeded my expectation. The quality of work is really beyond my expectations. I believe that is a right investment I've made, and I will do more.
So, with what you've heard so far, you can tell that we at UPDC stand behind our word and are ready to deliver all projects we embark on. If you missed out of this development and you would like to invest with us, we have an even bigger project coming up. We are bringing to you another 30-hectare mixed-use development along the Ogombo Road in Lekki Scheme 2, Lagos, which we call Brompton City. It will include a vibrant and welcoming commercial zone and, of course, a private, serene and secure residential area.
Okay, can we have the representatives of the sponsors join in the picture? Yes, sir. Thank you. Media, please let's have the video from Construct Technology played.
Building projects are tough enough. Why not let us handle the procurement process for you?
With Construct, you can outsource your construction material sourcing and focus on what really matters, building.
Save time and up to 20% in cost by cutting out the hassle of making over 10 calls to various vendors just to source and negotiate for materials. Call Construct. We simplify the entire process for you.
Enjoy consistent transparency with complete visibility on material costs. You always know you're getting the best price. And if any issues arise, our team handles them swiftly and effectively. With Construct, you're guaranteed top quality materials plus options for exchanges or refunds if needed. Access competitive pricing and on-time delivery. Construct, your partner in construction procurement. Let's build together.
Good afternoon, everyone. I see we're all getting restless. I'm going to make this very, very quick so that we can be out of here. So on behalf of the President of the Chambers, the Council members, Executive Committee of NBCC, and the members of the Real Estate and Construction Committee, we are very thankful to you for joining us this afternoon and spending time with us. I want to especially thank our speakers, Mrs. Udo Okonjo, CEO, Vice Chairman, Fine and Country, West Africa, Mr. Hakeem Oguniro, MD CEO of Eximia Realty, and our own chairman of the Construction and Real Estate Committee, Mr. Akin Okpatola, the president of FIAPSI, and Mrs. Nicole Berchen, Chief Sales Officer, Construct Technology, and of course, Mr. Oduayo Ojo, ably represented by Mr. Priye Johnson, our very special guest of honor, patrons and council members, and of course our sponsors, the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company PLC, UPDC PLC, Construct Technologies, and Deal HQ Partners. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for spending your afternoon with us. Please be aware that we have a few upcoming events at the Chambers that we'll be excited to have you join. We have the NBCC 2025 Trade Mission to the United Kingdom, themed driving trade, investment, and creativity towards a stronger global economic future. It's happening on the 7th to 11th April in London. Please reach out to the membership desk if you are interested in being a part of it. Also remember that this hall is available for external use. If you'd like to use this hall for any of your events, please reach out to the Chamber's headquarters and you will be able to get information on how to use this. Finally, if you are interested in becoming a member of the Chambers, please meet up with the membership desk to get more information. Also, please do go to follow us on social media. We are on Instagram at NBCC_NG and Nigeria-British Chamber of Commerce on Facebook and on Instagram. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.